My name is Guillermo Moreno. I am the president of Tenaris Canada. Today we are very pleased to host the Honorable Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Today I would like also to recognize the strong support that we have received from the federal government in many issues, and in particular for Minister Freeland, who has been a strong advocate of manufacturing and particularly of the steel industry over the last couple of years. In terms of trade and support to the steel industry, I would like to highlight, of course, the new NAFTA, lifting the steel tariff that were imposed through the 232, and also the improvements in the trade remedy system. So thank you, Minister, for that. This has been very important for us. Also, 2 weeks ago, we announced in Sault Ste. Marie that Tenaris is making an investment of $36 million in our facilities in Sault Ste. Marie and here in Calgary. And the federal government has provided an important support of $16 million for investment that will help us to create new jobs. So 90 new jobs will be created because of this investment, but also the investment are going to help us produce new products that are needed by our oil and gas industry, and also will help us to improve our productivity and efficiency in all our mills. Also, I would like to recognize and thank for the approval of Trans Mountain and LNG Canada. These are very important projects for us and for our industry. Here in Calgary, we all know and understand the importance of the development of the resources. But those resources are also a strong engine for the economy in Canada and new jobs that are created all around the country. Tenaris is one of the best examples with our facilities in Ontario and in Alberta. So we expect that more of these projects are approved, but also become in place and are commissioned, because there is no other industry like Canadian oil and gas industry that is as competitive but also follows the highest standards in terms of quality, health, safety, and environment. So, Mr. Freeland, thank you very much. As we normally say in Tenaris, we like to go the extra mile or the extra kilometer for our customers. So thank you for being here today, going the extra kilometer for our industry, and taking the time to tour our facilities.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Guillermo. Thank you very much, everyone, for giving me a great tour and a great conversation today. Thank you very much, Jesse, for the tour. I learned a lot. And let me start by acknowledging we are on the traditional territories of Treaty 7 people of Southern Alberta. Ça me fait un très grand plaisir d'être ici parmi vous aujourd'hui. L'industrie du acier et d'aluminium sont des industries très importantes pour le Canada et pour moi personnellement à cause de notre travail pour l'ALENA. Et concernant les tarifs sur la section 232, on a travaillé beaucoup avec l'industrie. It is really a huge pleasure for me to be here today. Alberta is my home province, and the energy sector here is really important to me. And the steel and aluminum sector across Canada is really important to me. As Guillermo said, we have had cause to work very closely together, both with companies and with labor. And I do want to recognize and thank the union representatives who are here today. The steel workers who are here were a very important part of our effort as well. We worked closely with this industry, with the Canadian steel sector, as Guillermo said, also with the energy sector, on NAFTA and during our NAFTA negotiations. And we work closely together in our fight to get the 232 tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum lifted. I am so delighted that we succeeded, thanks to our united and collective effort in getting those tariffs lifted. And it was just really a great moment for me to be here today, meet some of the people doing those jobs that getting those tariffs lifted were so personally important for, and that the negotiation was personally important for. And also to see the fantastic work people do here every day. Extremely competitive, extremely productive, and learning about some of the investments that are going to make this operation even more productive and competitive in the world. Merci beaucoup. I'm ready to answer your questions.
All right. So journalists can have one question, no follow-up. And before asking your question, please say your name and the name of your media outlet.
So it's James Keller with the Globe and Mail. Can you tell us what finally prompted Canada to issue a travel advisory for Hong Kong yesterday? And what would your advice be to any Canadians who are considering traveling there, regardless of the advisory?
So we give a lot of careful thought to all of our travel advisories everywhere in the world. I would strongly encourage all Canadians, before you travel anywhere, to take a look at our travel advisories. They are put together with a great degree of care and attention. When it comes to Hong Kong, I want to cite precisely what we have said. We have said now when it comes to Hong Kong, we encourage people to exercise a high degree of caution. The travel advisory spells out why that high degree of caution is appropriate. As people know, there are protests happening in Hong Kong, and there is some violence around those protests. And so I think it is common sense for Canadians to take great care. I do also want to say that there are 300,000 Canadians who live in Hong Kong, and I want to assure them and their families that we are very focused on them and on their welfare.
Carolyn Dunn from CBC News. I'm wondering if you can talk about what the Canadian government did in the Christian Baxter case to help secure his freedom.
I can't comment on that, apart from saying three things. First of all, this case has had a happy outcome, and I am delighted and frankly relieved. And I wish the best to him and to his family and loved ones, who I'm sure are going to have a great weekend. But I think this is also a case that should remind us all to exercise a high degree of caution when traveling to dangerous parts of the world. There's been a happy outcome here. Let's not allow this to cause us not to be careful. Alors, je suis très contente que M. Baxter pourra revenir au Canada. Et je suis certaine que sa famille sera aussi très, très contente. Je voudrais aussi remercier tous les diplomates canadiens qui ont fait du travail acharné. Et je veux aussi remercier le gouvernement du Lebanon. So let me just add that I also would like to thank the Canadian diplomats who have worked quietly and hard on this case, as they do on all consular cases. And I would also like to thank the government of Lebanon. This is a good outcome, and I'm really relieved.
Madame Freeland, Audrey Nadeau de Radio-Canada. Je vais vous poser la question en français, mais si vous pouvez répondre en anglais aussi, ce serait apprécié. Sur ce cas, pourquoi M. Baxter était emprisonné et est-ce que le gouvernement canadien a donné quelque chose en échange de sa libération? So why was Mr. Baxter in prison, and has the Canadian government given anything in exchange for his liberation?
Concernant tous les détails, c'est une affaire privée et je ne peux pas donner les commentaires, mais je voudrais assurer les Canadiens que c'est un bon résultat et que le Canada était, comme nous essayons d'être toujours, très correct dans tout ce qu'on a fait dans cette affaire. So this is a consular case. It's a private matter, and it's not appropriate to offer details. But let me say that I can assure Canadians that the Government of Canada behaved absolutely correctly in this case, as we do in all consular matters. And I just want to reiterate that I am personally relieved by this outcome, and I am sure Mr. Baxter's family and loved ones are as well.
Minister Bill Graveland from Canadian Press. It's been a year since the problems with Saudi Arabia happened. What progress has been made in repairing the damage, and also, do you have a date for when the LAV sales to Saudi Arabia review will be done?
Okay, a lot of questions there. Let me start by commenting on arms exports to Saudi Arabia. Following the really horrific murder of Jamal Khashoggi in a consulate in a NATO ally of Canada's, Canada has decided to review all of our arms export permits to Saudi Arabia. During the period of this review, we are not signing new permits. It's a complicated situation and work is ongoing. And I do want to reiterate for Canadians that during this period of review, we're not signing new permits. I did have a chance to meet with Agnès Calamer, the UN Special Rapporteur working on this case last month when I was in London. In terms of the relationship with Saudi Arabia, the comments that Canada made supporting human rights and the rights of human rights activists, very much including women and feminist activists. These are comments, this is an approach Canada takes around the world. Canada is a country that is proud to speak up for human rights, and we're proud to support human rights activists, very much including women's rights activists, feminists around the world, even while acknowledging, of course, that Canada is not perfect and we have a lot of work to do at home. This is a time in the world when human rights, including media freedom, are under a lot of pressure. And I really believe that it behooves Canada as a country that values human rights so much. It does behoove us to speak out for people who do not enjoy all the liberties that we do. That is something that Canada will continue to do around the world, even as we appreciate that sometimes it comes with a price. I believe the price for not speaking out is even higher, because when we don't speak out, what we see is abusers of human rights are emboldened and the abuse becomes greater. And if you look back in history, I think the moments when countries have not spoken out are moments that subsequent generations have looked back on with regret. Having said all of that, Saudi Arabia is an important partner for Canada, and we continue to work with Saudi Arabia on a number of different issues at a number of different levels. We continue to have contact with the government of Saudi Arabia. I spoke with my counterpart in Osaka at the G20 meetings. My cabinet colleagues have contact with their counterparts. And that's, of course, also entirely appropriate.
Chrystia with Global News. Thank you, Minister. There's a great deal of concern with in Alberta in the agricultural sector regarding China. Where are we in terms of China's continued block of canola?
I am very aware of that concern as a person who has herself swathed quite a few acres of canola. And I spend a lot of time talking with Canadian farmers across the country, including farmers in the prairies, including farmers who seed and harvest a lot of canola. One of the things I'm going to be doing here in Alberta is spending some time talking to farmers. And I also stay in close touch with the Canadian commodities firms and the international commodities firms that work in Canada. So I am very aware of the issue. It was an issue, it is an issue which we are raising consistently with our Chinese counterparts. I'd like to also really thank and congratulate my colleague Jim Carr, the Minister of International Trade, who has been working hard at seeking additional markets for Canadian canola. That's an important effort as well. I think one of the things we learned in the NAFTA negotiations with the United States is no matter how close a friend or a partner we have, it's never good for any country or any industry to depend on a single client. I think Guillermo here, on behalf of Tenaris, would say to us he likes to have a number of clients, and I think our country needs to have diversified trading partners. So that's something we're working on too. As for Canadian canola, let me also just say, Canadian canola is fantastic. It is healthy. I cook with canola oil for my family every day that I'm home. And while it is important, of course, to go through all the scientific and technical processes, I'd like to assure everyone around the world who buys Canadian canola that it is a great and healthy product. And I do want to assure Canadian farmers that we are working hard to open up new markets for Canadian canola, hand in hand with the industry, and that we are also continuing to work with China on this issue. It is, of course, of mutual benefit for both China and Canada for Canadian canola, or the seed, the meal, the oil, for all of that to be sold to China. China does have a need for oil seeds. So it's an issue which we're going to keep working on. I was exactly a week ago able to meet with Minister Wang Yi, my Chinese counterpart, in Bangkok on the margins of the ASEAN meeting. And it was a positive step that we were able to meet, and we will, we agreed that we would continue talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the last question. La dernière question.
Steve Kaiser, 660 News and City News.
Before you ask your question, can I just cough so that I don't interrupt my answer? Okay.
Minister, do you have an update on the detention of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor in China, and what is Canada doing, if they're doing anything, in trying to get them released?
We are doing a lot, and in that meeting with Minister Wang Yi, while of course it was a meeting that addressed a broad range of issues, as is appropriate given the relationship between China and Canada, which covers a broad range of issues. Of course, my priority was and is the detentions of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. Canada continues to be very concerned about this. It's a positive step that I was able to express Canada's concerns directly to Minister Wang Yi. We are also continuing to work with our allies around the world. These detentions are not purely of concern to Canada. They are of concern to many countries. Most recently, on Tuesday in Toronto, I met Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, the newly appointed British Foreign Secretary. Canada was the first country he traveled to for a bilateral visit. And in our meeting, as Secretary Raab and I said afterwards, we did discuss this issue, and I took the opportunity to thank Secretary Raab and the United Kingdom for the strong and public support they have given us in advocating for Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. And I do just want to say, on a personal note, at the beginning of this conversation, we spoke about consular cases. I think consular cases are painful for all Canadians. They're certainly very personal for me. These two detentions are very particular because of the arbitrary nature of those detentions. And I do want to say how much respect and admiration I have for Michael Spavor and for Michael Kovrig. They are two brave Canadians who are facing a difficult situation through no fault of their own, and they are they're conducting themselves with incredible grace and tenacity. They're showing real Canadian grit, as are their families, for whom this is also an ordeal. And I would just like to say how much I admire them, and I think that that is a feeling that the overwhelming majority of Canadians share.
Thank you very much.